Professor Tsung-Dao Lee once said, "The entire Chinese nation is like one person, the largest in the world, the largest in history, and the largest to come." Many individuals passionate about physics have come together through their connection with Professor Lee. The Chinese Physical Society, as a bridge connecting physicists and advancing the field of physics, also shares a deep bond with Professor Lee. Next, I will speak as the president of the Chinese Physical Society. Fellow physicists around the world, today we gather at the Quest for Infinity Hall of the Tsung-Dao Lee Institute to commemorate a thinker and explorer who viewed the cosmos and all existence through the philosophical lens of science, Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. In his popular science work Symmetry and Asymmetry, Lee referenced the ancient Chinese poet Yuan Qu's masterpiece Tianwen in Chinese, translated as Quest for Infinity, which he believed contained humanity's earliest musings on the laws governing celestial motions, recognizing symmetry's paramount importance in understanding the universe. It is for this reason that I have borrowed two verses as the title for my speech today. The edge of the ninth heaven extends to where, and what does it rely on for connection? These poetic lines probe the fundamental dynamics permeating all of creation, a lifelong inquiry for Professor Lee that inspired the name of this grand spherical auditorium at this main venue of the memorial service. On behalf of the Chinese Physical Society, I reflect on TD's contributions to our organization and the development of physics in China. Furthermore, I wish to recount some personal memories of my encounters with TD to send my condolences. TD's entry into the physics was guided by the luminary figures he studied under at Zhejiang University and National Southwestern Associated University. Luminaries like 大右吴祁孙业、玉太绕、新北树、有训吴、裴元周 and 钟瑶照. These pioneers laid the foundations for modern Chinese physics and were founding members and active participants of the Chinese Physical Society. Not only did they impart knowledge, but they also conveyed a deep sense of national pride and an educational philosophy focused on creating opportunities for young people, values that profoundly influenced Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. Since 1972, Professor Lee made numerous visits to China, laying the foundation for the cultivation of Chinese physics talents. In 1976, he led an initiative that sent dozens of Chinese physicists to train at cutting-edge high-energy institutions abroad. This first wave of Tsung-Dao Lee scholars became the driving force behind high-energy physics in China. Then, in the spring of 1979, TD delivered a 3-month lecture series in Beijing that boosted Chinese scientists' understanding of global scientific frontiers and modern research methodologies, kickstarting what would later be remembered as China's scientific spring. Between 1979 and 1989, at a critical moment when China sought to foster elite young STEAM talent, TD spearheaded the Cuspia program, a groundbreaking collaboration in physics graduate training between China and the U.S. Under his guidance, this initiative nurtured 915 outstanding scientific luminaries and leaders across the spectrum of fields. This endeavor marked a pivotal advancement in educational cooperation between the two nations. One of TD's greatest concerns and long-standing efforts was the scientific cooperation between China and the United States. In 1979, through his persistent efforts and negotiations, Sino-US High-Energy Physics Collaboration Agreement was signed during Deng Xiaoping's first visit to the U.S. This establishment created the first bridge for scientific cooperation between the two countries and became one of the earliest, longest lasting, and most fruitful areas of collaboration between the two countries. Between 2003 and 2006, I was the head of the Chinese set of the collaboration. I had the opportunity to work under his direct guidance. We advanced Sino-US cooperation and resolved many challenges in the field of scientific collaboration. I earned his trust and was honored to be regarded as his close friend across generations. In November 2006, just before I assumed the presidency of Shanghai Jiao Tong University, TD offered sincere advice, expressing his wish to bolster our scientific endeavors. During his stay, we had numerous candlelight discussions at his residence on Wanping Road in Shanghai, which ultimately inspired him to leave a lasting legacy to the university. This legacy encompassed a lifetime's collection, his scientific literature, research papers, correspondence, artworks, his Nobel medal, certificates, former residence, and so much more, all intended to inspire future generations. This generous donation paved the way for the establishment of the Tsung-Dao Lee Library on Minhang campus of SJTU in December 2014. 2 years later, the Tsung-Dao Lee Institute was founded, embodying TD's vision of probing the most fundamental scientific inquiries and aspiring to be a premier institution at the forefront of physics and astronomy. This institute is committed to expanding the frontiers of human knowledge, unraveling the intricate connections between the largest and smallest, and the most profound and fundamental laws of interactions. TD once shared symmetry unveils the universe beauty, asymmetry births its reality. He also mused truth is science pursuit, beauty art's aspiration. With a humanistic touch and philosophical insights, he intertwined the micro and macro worlds, blending the evolution of physics, the essence of time, the essence of life, fundamental principles, cutting-edge frontiers, and the destiny of humanity. Though this brilliant star has dimmed, his luminous legacy shall resound evermore. To conclude my remarks, I offer a couplet in eulogy of Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. Through painstaking efforts, he advanced his nation's scientific and technological powers. Among the brilliant minds he gathered, the next generation stands in awe of the master. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee, may you rest in eternal peace. Thank you. During Professor Lee's academic career, he established deep connections with physical societies around the world, particularly with the American Physical Society. As a fellow of the APS, Professor Lee's international influence facilitated extensive academic exchange. Today, we are honored to have the president of APS, Yang-Ki Kim, joining us through a recorded video message. Please now watch the video message from President Yang-Ki Kim.
Physical Society, we extend our deepest condolences on the passing of the renowned Chinese-American physicist, Nobel Laureate, and APS Fellow, Professor T.D. Tsung-Dao Lee. The world has lost a remarkable person and an eminent scientist. Professor Lee had a profound impact on the physics enterprise, including path-breaking work in particle and nuclear physics, as well as in neighboring fields ranging from quantum field theory to high-energy neutrino physics. Professor Lee also played a vital role in establishing bridges between China and the United States, creating links that we are still building on today. We are grateful for his contributions to physics and to the international physics community. In 1946, Professor Lee came to the University of Chicago and received his PhD in 1950 under Enrico Fermi, Nobel Laureate and former president of the APS. On behalf of the University of Chicago, I would like to extend our sympathies to his family and to everyone who had the privilege to know him. One of Professor Lee's lifelong and tireless efforts was to bridge the divide between the US and China at a time of bitter discord between the two countries. I had the privilege to know him through the US-China High Energy Physics Cooperation meetings between 2006 and 2013 as a deputy director of a Fermilab. These annual cooperation meetings began in 1979 with the formal agreement between China and the US to cooperate in the field of particle physics. The first major product of these efforts was the successful construction of the Beijing Electron-Positron Collider in China. This China-US cooperation stands as a shining example of how both sides can enrich rather than weaken each other. I would like to end with some personal anecdotes. I understood that Professor Lee was born on November 24th. I told him my birthday was a day later. He responded by saying that in Chinese time, he was born on November 25th, but when he first applying for a passport to come to US, he used the date he was born in a US time zone. Thus, we share the same birthday, and this made me very happy. With my father-in-law, his colleague in the philosophy department at Columbia University passed away, he folded a beautiful and meaningful paper crane and gave it to my mother-in-law and the family. The entire world physics community honors his legacy and mourns his passing.
Thank you, President Yong-Ki Kim. Not only did Professor Tsung-Dao Lee excel in his academic field, but he also played a crucial role in advancing global scientific collaboration and exchange. The International Union of Pure and Applied Physics profoundly recognizes and respects his scientific spirit. IUPAP President Michael Spiro will convey his respect and tribute to Professor Lee through a recorded video message. Please now watch the video message from IUPAP's President Michael Spiro.
Thank you for giving me the possibility to say a few words in memory of Professor Tsung-Dao Lee on behalf of IUPAP, the International Union of Pure and Applied Physics. The mission of IUPAP has always been and is still to foster the advancement of physics, to promote collaboration in physics, and to help in the application of physics towards solving problems of concern to humanity. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee was perfectly illustrating those principles. First, advancing frontiers in physics in almost all fields of physics. In quantum field theory, in particle physics, especially with the theory of parity violation in weak interactions, in nuclear physics, in statistical theory of equations of states and phase transitions, in fluid dynamics, and in astrophysics. Second, promoting collaboration in physics by establishing strong collaboration, strong links between the US and China, and also with many other places, and that way helping with physics towards installing peaceful common goals. IUPAP recognizes in Professor Tsung-Dao Lee a flagship and an emblematic figure for physics in our time. This is why IUPAP is co-sponsoring this memorial meeting. IUPAP wishes to express its deep and sincere condolences.
Thank you, President Microspiral. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee's schooling took place during a time of war in China, and he attended the Southwest Associated University, a collaborative institution formed by Peking University, Tsinghua University, and Nankai University. It was here that Professor Lee received systematic and rigorous training in physics and mathematics, and had the privilege of studying under esteemed mentors such as Dayou Wu, Qi Ye, and Xin Beishu. Now we invite representatives from Peking University and Tsinghua Universities to speak on behalf of the universities. First, let's welcome Yu Zhongren, Vice President of Peking University. Respected family of Professor Tsung-Dao Lee, leaders, teachers, and students. I'm here today on behalf of Peking University as entrusted by Secretary Hao Ping and President Gong Qihuang to extend our deepest condolences for Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. Faculty and students from our physics department are joining us remotely from a satellite venue at Peking U. In 3 days, we will hold a symposium to honor and remember Professor Lee. He was a world-renowned scientist and educator, and also a cherished Peking U alumnus and honorary professor. His journey with Peking U started in 1945 at the National Southwestern Associated University, marking the beginning of a lifelong connection with us. Professor Lee has long devoted to the development of Peking U. His contributions were instrumental in founding the Beijing Center for Modern Physics, the Peking University High Energy Physics Research Center, and the Center for Theoretical Biology. In 2003, he celebrated our physics department's 90th anniversary with a painting titled "The Physics Tree Has Grown into a Forest." On the eve of Peking U's 110th anniversary in 2008, he penned a preface wishing for continued excellence. In 2022, he inspired the first class of our Physics Talent Excellence program with Innovation Leads to Excellence, Talent Shapes the Future. Last September, he marked the department's anniversary with Peking U Physics, a century-old forest and a decade-renewed growth. Professor Lee's deep love for his alma mater has deeply touched everyone at Peking U. The university has actively supported his visionary efforts to advance science and education in China. He was the driving force behind the China-US Physics Examination Application, which was led by Professor Ke Qishen, then Vice President, and Professor Kai Huazhao, then Director of the Physics Department. Between 1979 and 1988, the program sent 915 students to the U.S. for further studies, including 202 from Peking U. Most of these scholars returned to China, where they have become leading figures in their fields. In 1998, Professor Lee founded the Hui Junqing and Tsung-Dao Lee Endowment Program to support exceptional students from Peking University and other Chinese institutions in their fundamental scientific research. Over the past 2 decades, this fund has aided over 1,000 undergraduates at Peking U. This July, Professor Ruo Chuangliu from our School of Mathematical Sciences won the 2024 Ramanujan Prize. He was among the first recipients of this fund. This award is a fitting tribute to Professor Lee's enduring commitment to education and his dedication to fostering young talents. For years, whenever we talk about Professor Lee's legacy, everyone at Peking U is profoundly inspired by his noble spirit. We should honor his affection and devotion for homeland. He once liked China as a grand banyan tree, stating all of China is like one person, the largest person in the world, the largest in history, and the largest to come. As China's great rejuvenation moves forward, we should take his lesson to heart and strive to cultivate a new generation with commitment to giving back. We should take to heart Professor Lee's principles on nurturing talents. His groundbreaking programs have profoundly shaped how we cultivate top innovators and have become a model for many universities. One of his key contributions was championing the establishment of the postdoctoral system in Chinese mainland. This system has had a lasting impact on education, science, and talent development in China. Today, Peking University's exceptional faculty is a testament to the success of this system. We should take inspiration from Professor Lee's fearless approach to innovation. Throughout his career, he consistently reached new heights and made significant breakthroughs in cutting-edge science. In today's era of unprecedented change, groundbreaking and original innovations are essential for advancing science and technology and achieving technological breakthroughs. As we face new challenges, it's crucial that we embrace and uphold Professor Lee's pioneering mindset more than ever. Finally, we should take inspiration from Professor Lee's visionary global outlook. He overcame many challenges to forge scientific collaborations between China and the world. Today, as we are in a new era and face new hurdles in international academic exchanges, we need to carry forward his vision. Let's stay attuned to global trends and work to strengthen international scientific cooperation, contributing our collective wisdom for the benefit of humanity. Thank you. Thank you. Let's welcome Yong Guo, Deputy Secretary of the CPC Tsinghua University Committee. Respected family members of Professor Tsung-Dao Lee, esteemed guests, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today, with profound grief, we gather to commemorate the life of Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. We honor his pioneering scientific accomplishments, his unwavering moral integrity, and the profound impact he has had on countless lives. On behalf of Tsinghua University, I extend our deepest condolences to the passing of Tsung-Dao Lee and to the family of Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee was a renowned Chinese-American physicist, Nobel Laureate in physics, and outstanding Tsinghua Luminous Honorary Professor and Honorary Director of Tsinghua's Center for Arts and Sciences. His contributions have left a mark on China's scientific education, high-energy physics research, nurturing exceptional talent, and development of Tsinghua University. Professor Lee's connections with Tsinghua University run deep and span decades. Back in spring 1945, upon transferring to the National Southwestern Associated University, the first person he sought out was Professor Jingren Lu from our entomology department, who became his academic guarantor. Professor Lee's student records remain carefully preserved in our archives, a testament to our enduring bond. Qi Sun-Ye, the founding father of modern physics in China and founder of Tsinghua's physics department, taught Lee the course on electromagnetism. Professor Lee later recounted how Professor Ye's stringent standards influenced his life. In spring 1946, when commissioned by the government to recommend two physicists teaching assistants for doctoral studies in the U.S., Professor Wu Dayou consulted Professor Ye, who recommended the then sophomore year student Lee. As Professor Lee remarked, Professor Ye was not only his enlightening mentor, but a lifelong influence on his scientific achievements. Even as he pursued graduate students abroad, Professor Lee's devotion and affection to his homeland and to Tsinghua never wavered. In 1979, he initiated and organized the landmark China-US Physics Examination and Application Program, recommending outstanding students for advanced training in America, a pioneering model addressing China's urgent need for top talent. 40 Tsinghua scholars entered this program, many now at the vanguard of global innovation or making pivotal disciplinary contributions. In the mid-1980s, heeding Professor Lee's advocacy, China officially instituted its postdoctoral system, nurturing the advanced researchers it crucially needed. On the eve of Tsinghua's 91st anniversary, its first postdoctoral fellows returned for a celebratory event, and Professor Lee penned a commemorative inscription while sending a congratulatory letter to then President Da Zhongwang, encouraging the university's efforts and progress. During his May 1984 visit to China, Professor Lee returned to Tsinghua University and accepted an honorary professorship. He frequently delivered academic lectures thereafter, sharing insights into fundamental science and modern physics while engaging with faculty and students. In 1999, at the inauguration of Tsinghua's Institute for Advanced Study, Professor Lee attended to offer congratulations, supporting the university's basic and talent development endeavors. A central tenet guiding Professor Lee's career is his conviction that science and art are intrinsically intertwined. It was at his urging that Tsinghua University hosted the inaugural Arts and Sciences International Symposium in 2001, concurrently unveiling our Center for Arts and Sciences, with Professor Lee serving as its esteemed honorary director. Over the following years, 6 landmark exhibitions and conferences were successfully organized under his banner, elevating it to a prestigious Tsinghua hallmark while propelling the development of our Academy of Arts and Design. For generations, Professor Lee has been revered by the Tsinghua community as a model of unwavering diligence, perseverance, and lofty ideals. Though he has departed this world, his legacy will forever inspire us to strive for national rejuvenation and renaissance of Chinese nation. As we mourn the passing of Professor Tsung-Dao Lee, we also cherish the enduring legacy he has bestowed upon us. Thank you. Thank you. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee played a crucial role in the successful development of the Beijing Electron-Positron Collider. He not only provided essential scientific guidance and facilitated international cooperation, but also through his global influence and expertise, significantly advanced the development of BEPC. Next, we invite Professor Wang Yifang, Director of the Institute of High Energy Physics, Chinese Academy of Sciences, to deliver a speech. Distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, good morning. We gathered here today with heavy hearts to mourn the passing and honor the life of our deeply revered Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. His nearly century-long journey leaves a legacy of invaluable wisdom worthy of being remembered and carried forward. In reflecting on Professor Lee's life, we stand in awe of his profound mastery of science and unwavering patriotism and ardent love for advancing scientific and educational pursuits. Professor Lee's passing represents a great loss for China's scientific and technological community. From the early 1970s onward, much like many Chinese scholars abroad, Professor Lee frequently returned to China, lending his advice towards the national development. Through academic exchanges, lectures, and collaborations, he made contributions propelling relevant fields forward. Yet what truly set him apart was his pioneering vision. He was never content with mere discourse and advice, instead providing constructive guidance while taking real action himself. His own efforts achieved pioneering feats that most could scarcely even imagine. The launch and construction of BEPC, China's first major scientific facility for high-energy physics, was hugely driven by Professor Lee's strong backing. This required extraordinary foresight and boldness of vision, with courage and resolve to see it through. Professor Lee devoted his utmost efforts towards the promotion of the Chinese high-energy physics and the realization of the BEPC, making an unparalleled monumental contribution. Its success marked a watershed moment, vaulting China into international leadership in tar-charm physics and laying the foundation for subsequent large-scale engineering projects for far-reaching significance. Earlier, Professor Lee broke new ground with pioneering neutrino research. When plans for the Diabe neutrino experiment were proposed, he devoted himself to the meticulous study while championing the initiation of the project within China and the establishment of the Diabe reactor neutrino experiment. Going beyond merely advocacy, Professor Lee immersed himself in theoretical investigations pertaining to the theta-13 parameter. His pivotal contributions extended to organizing the neutrino research in the Diabe Area International Workshop under the organization of CCAST, which proved instrumental in the ultimate success of the experiment. Professor Lee's unwavering advocacy has been a cornerstone of many of China's leading scientific facilities, such as Beijing Synchrotron, Shanghai Synchrotron, Spallation Neutrino Source, and others. With each milestone, his congratulatory messages didn't just acknowledge the progress made, they were filled with genuine encouragement, care, and joy. From our humble beginnings to taking bold strides, from following to leading in certain areas, under his continuous guidance, China's high-energy physics endeavors have found a path to consistent success. I anticipate our homeland making even greater strides in this area, expressed by Professor Lee. As a globally acclaimed physicist, Professor Lee stands not only as a scholarly beacon, but also a figure deeply devoted to his homeland. He advocated for institutionalizing and nurturing talent in the scientific field. Leveraging his status and influence, he sought international resources, driving the establishment of formal China-US high-energy physics collaboration frameworks, setting a model for China's long-term international partnerships in basic research. A cherished aspiration of his was to see modern science and technology, which he so cherished, flourish and bear fruit on Chinese soil. His efforts to promote a supportive academic environment and facilitate exchanges between domestic and foreign institutions, thereby enabling Chinese scholars to achieve world-class research accomplishments within their own borders. Professor Lee founded the Chinese Center of Advanced Science and Technology, the so-called CCAST, in 1987. He personally led as its director, overseeing the organization of more than 20 international conferences. During the 1990s, driven by a resolute determination to enable global collaboration between BEPC and leading high-energy physics laboratories via the Internet, he navigated the complexities of Chinese and U.S. leadership. This paved the way for the inception of China's first international Internet service based on Internet protocols, marking the advent of China's Internet era. Without his monumental efforts, this watershed likely would have been years delayed. Professor Lee is fully committed to serving and expressing his affection to his homeland and never wants to burden others, even when getting around became really difficult later in his life. He took care of his personal needs independently without asking for outside help or retiring back to China. He carried himself with composure, refinement, and thoughtfulness. He mentored and guided his younger colleagues with a fatherly approach, leaving us deeply admiring his noble character time and again. The scientific and educational pursuits Professor Lee so dearly valued have now seen remarkable advancements. From modern beginnings, China's fundamental research has risen to global prominence. We will carry on with unwavering dedication. We will honor his aspirations by fulfilling his remaining dreams. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Wang Yifang. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee was a renowned physicist and a dear friend to mine. His presence, scientific spirit, and every word and action left a profound and lasting impression on everyone who had the privilege of knowing him. Next, we will hear from the five representatives who were close friends of Professor Lee. First, we have a video message from Frank Wilczek, the 2004 Nobel Laureate in Physics and the founding director of the Tsung-Dao Lee Institute, who is currently serving as a chief scientist. He has recorded this message to express his profound condolences for Professor Lee.
My friend and inspiration, T.D. Lee. I first met T.D. at Columbia University in 1973, where I gave one of my very first seminars. At that time, I was still a graduate student, and of course, T.D. Lee was already a very eminent and famous physicist, legendary physicist, having discovered the violation of parity and the weak interactions, among many other stellar achievements that are in textbooks and that I was aware of, and having won the Nobel Prize. So he was on a vastly different level. Yet, when I met him, he was very open and unassuming, and he made me feel respected, like a colleague rather than a lowly student. Besides these personal contacts with TD, I had contacts with him kind of at one remove, at a higher level, that I found quite inspiring and awesome. He was very influential in keeping Brookhaven National Laboratory a vital place where his vision of physics as an experimental and theoretical enterprise was embodied. He specifically was very influential, and probably decisively influential, in getting the so-called Riken program of large-scale computing going there, and supportive postdocs who did that activity. That was vital to the predictive power and experimental verification of QCD at low energies. And he also inspired the heavy ion collision work at Brookhaven. The relativistic heavy ion collider, I don't think would have happened without his influence, both as a scientific inspiration and as a political force. And that, of course, has been an extremely fruitful and productive enterprise that we all can be proud of. I mentioned before his statesman-like achievements at Brookhaven National Laboratory in forming institutions. Of course, in China, he also was a great institution builder. The Cuspia program was the source of life in Chinese science, Chinese physics, connecting it with the international community when things were very difficult, and has been very fruitful in forming a generation of accomplished Chinese students, allowing them to study abroad and come back and contribute to physics in a way that would have been otherwise impossible, and changed their lives and has changed the physics community for the better. And last but not least, in recent years, T.D. Lee was, of course, a big catalyst in getting the T.D. Lee Institute started in Shanghai in conjunction with SJTU, and it's now a thriving institution with a great future before it, and one more of T.D. Lee's legacies. So it's been a life fully lived, an inspiring story that starts with difficult times in wartime in China, study, assiduous study, that enabled him to go to study with Fermi at Chicago and have early spectacular success at an early age, made great contributions to science, and then went on to be a great statesman of science, for science, forming a thriving family and community at Columbia, building things at Brookhaven, Cuspia, and TDLI. Those fortunate enough to know him personally will remember him not only as a great scientist, but as a warm and wise human being. So again, a life well lived, and it's bittersweet that like all human lives, it comes to an end, but I think we can celebrate a life that was fulfilled, fruitful, and has left a remarkable legacy.
Thank you, Frank. Now let's welcome former president of Shanghai Jiao University, academician Lin Zhongqing. Respected James Lee, family members of Professor Tsung-Dao Lee, Director Zhang Jie, distinguished guests, gathered with heavy hearts today, we pay tribute to Professor Lee, a renowned academic figure whose groundbreaking scientific contributions have shaped the realm of research. His dedication to his hometown was also evident. His work has proposed the development of science, technology, and education in China. In 2014, Professor Lee wrote a letter to national leaders suggesting the building of a prestigious research institute at Shanghai Jiao University akin to the Niels Bohr Institute. His idea kept the attention of the national and local leaders. Since 2017, I was entrusted by former President Zhang Jie to oversee the building of Tsung-Dao Lee Institute. Throughout this process, I developed a profound friendship with Professor Lee. Professor Lee cares deeply about the building and development of Tsung-Dao Lee Institute. We often discuss key matters through correspondence. In 2018 February and 2019 April, I led a delegation to San Francisco, USA, to update Professor Lee on our progress, and extending the invitation for him to take the role of honorary director. He mentioned that he has provided key suggestions for the development of the institute, and he mentioned that the success recipe lies in exceptional leadership and forward-thinking research. Supported by Professor Lee, we appointed Nobel Laureate Professor Frank Wilczek as the Institute's inaugural director in September 2017. Following Professor Wilczek's tenure, we welcome academician Zhang Jie as the second director. Under their leadership, the Institute surged to the forefront of the global scientific exploration, delving into particle and nuclear physics, astrophysics, astronomy, and quantum foundational science, areas championed by Professor Lee. This endeavor bore fruit, yielding a series of groundbreaking research findings with global impact. The building of the institute also received strong support from central and national ministries, the Shanghai Municipal Party Committee and government, and various bureaus. The design of the building we are currently in was inspired by Professor Lee's philosophy of quest for infinity and understanding the language of heaven and unraveling the mysteries of the world. Through collective effort, it was completed after a 3-year construction and officially opened in 2021. In the same year, Professor Lee once again reached out to party and state leaders, updating them on the Institute's programs and expressing his hope for its leading role in propelling China's science and technology sectors forward. Professor Lee cares deeply about the building and development of the Institute, and this is also supported by many leaders and experts. Each Chinese New Year, he would personally craft and design postcards based on his own paintings, which were then distributed by the Tsung-Dao Lee Institute to leaders, colleagues, and supporters who cares about the Institute, and to convey gratitude and express New Year wishes. This sincere gesture resonated with us and showcased Professor Lee's hope for life, passion for life, and his pursuit of homogenizing science and art. Throughout his lifetime, Professor Lee achieved academic excellence, scaled new height, and devoted himself to his country's programs while nurturing talents on global scale. His passing is a huge loss for the nation and the scientific community. He leaves behind a legacy of treasures. His love for his country, his rigor and refined artistic sensibilities are deserving our lasting remembrance and continuation. Today, in remembrance of Professor Lee, let us strive to meet his expectations, uphold his values and endeavors, and further his impactful legacy. Thank you all. Thank you, Academician Li Zhongqing. Academician He Zuoxiu, because of health reasons, could not attend personally. That's why he has written a statement which he has asked Wang Chuilin, the Deputy Director of the Academic Committee of the China Center for Advanced Science Technology and Professor of Tsung-Dao Lee Institute, to read on his behalf. Please welcome researcher Wang Chuilin. Mr. He is an alumnus of Shanghai Jiao University. From 1945 to 1947, he studied chemistry at SJTU before shifting his focus to physics and later contributing to the development of atomic bomb. Here is Mr. He's eulogy. We have received the sad news that Professor Lee passed away in San Francisco. He would have turned 98 this November. We are deeply saddened by this news. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee and I are contemporaries in physics, and we are only 9 months apart. That's why we have so much in common. For instance, he once told me that he once recounted his time at the National Southwestern Association University, where he participated in the December 1st movement in Kunming on December 1st, 1945. During the chaos where the agent attempted to address 4 martyrs, he was right there in the thick of it, narrowly missing a bullet that whizzed past his head. He humorously noted that if he had been a bit taller, history might have recorded 5 martyrs instead of 4. Later, an array of senior physicists and chemists, along with young students, went to the U.S. to learn automatic bomb making. Among those selected by Professor Dao Wu were Sun Tao Li and Zhu Guangye. However, due to the strict U.S. restriction that barred other nations from mastering atomic bomb technology, Professor Lee was forced to shift his focus to political science. This change mirrored our own academic experiences, providing a common ground and common topic between us. Despite our shared experiences, Professor Lee often stressed discretion. He humbly claimed that his contribution to particle physics did not significantly advance China's cause. Nonetheless, it's important to recognize that his work greatly advanced the scientific progress in China. On March 18, 1978, under the leadership of Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping, a pivotal national science conference took place in Beijing. At this conference, a respected group of physicists advocated for creation of a cost-effective theoretical physics research institute to boost scientific advancement in China. This proposal quickly won Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping's endorsement, leading to the building of the institute with Professor Peng Huanwu as the director and Professor He Zuoxiu as the deputy director. Setting up this institute initially felt overwhelming for me. I hardly knew where to begin. However, during a timely visit to China, I consulted Professor Tsung-Dao Lee for his advice. He suggested that you can go to an exploratory trip to the U.S. to observe various theoretical physics research units and to study their experience and best practices. And then Professor Lee quickly mapped out a route and laid out all the budget and instantly offered organizational support for me. Following his guidance, we formed a delegation including Professor He Zuoxiu, Dai Yuanben, Hao Bolin, Gu Hanying, Zhu Xiquan. This team went on to a 3-month tour across the U.S. to study how U.S. done research in this field. This trip was very eye-opening, and we have met many peers in this field, and Professor Lee also recommended us to the Stony Brook at the State University of New York to study with Professor Chen Yang. Then during our trip, we also reconnected with Professor Marshak, who we had first encountered at the 9th International High Energy Physics Conference in Kyiv in 1959. I was curious about the driver of the America's sustained growth. I inquired about key contributors. Marshak revealed that about 1/7 of Americans are committed to the nation's prosperity. That's the true backbone of America. Later, we shared insight with Professor Lee at Columbia University. I told him what Professor Marshak told us. And Professor Lee validated that Mr. Marshak was right. And he also validated this 1/7 indeed support America's success. Professor Lee later recommended several impactful initiatives to Chinese government, including a postdoc system, a special program for gifted young students, and also the Caspia program to send Chinese students abroad. I always believed that Professor Lee is a true lover to his country, and he has done concrete actions to support his ideal and his love for his country. Professor Lee is a scientific luminary. Thank you, Mr. Wang Chuilin. Now let's welcome Chen Hesheng, former director of the Institute of High Energy Physics. Distinguished guests and friends, Tsung-Dao Lee stands as one of the most towering figures of the 20th century of physics and has made landmark contribution to the field. As a Chinese-born physicist, Professor Lee was dedicated to developing the science and education in China, and he has committed himself to the development of high-energy physics in China. His passing away is a huge loss to the international physics community and even a greater one to the Chinese scientific community. With deep sorrow, we honor Professor Lee's tremendous contribution to high-energy physics in China. From the summer of 1998, when I became the director of the Institute of High Energy Physics, until Professor Lee's retirement in 2011, I had the privilege of working under his personal guidance and mentorship. I was inspired by his strategic vision for development of particle physics. Every year, I would meet with Professor Lee multiple times to provide detailed reports on the work of IHEP, discussing upcoming plans, especially coordinating with relevant national departments. During our most challenging moment, Professor Lee always offered his unconditional support, working to overcome obstacles for our major projects. When I first took office, the IHEP was in a difficult situation due to underfunding for the operation and maintenance for the Beijing Electron Positron Collider, BEPC, and the renovation project had not yet met its target. Additionally, there was disagreement about the future development plans. In the spring of 1999, despite challenges, we achieved our renovation goal and made significant progress in measuring our values. And also, Professor Lee helped us secure an increase in BEPC annual operating budget from 27 million to 50 million, as well as an additional 30 million annually for 3 years for the renovation. Both Professor Lee and the Chinese high-energy physics community were concerned about the future of high-energy physics in China. After extensive discussion and guidance by Professor Lee, we had established the development strategy. Entrusted by CAS, we formulated the development goals for China's high-energy physics and advanced accelerator, which were endorsed in principle at the 7th meeting of National Science and Technology Leading Group. The future development of BEPC would follow the international standard major renovation approach known as BEPC Second Non-Accelerator Physics Experiment. Development large-scale scientific research platform based on accelerators. Such development is a milestone in the planning and development of China's high-energy physics. Professor Lee supported this strategy and was concerned about the deployment of these research directions. He fully supported this strategy through China-U.S. high-energy physics talks. BEPC Second faced intensive competition from CESRC. In June 2001, I briefed Professor Lee on BEPC Second during design and the competitive pressure we were up against. Lee firmly backed the dual-ring approach and highlighted a key point. First, CESR's shift to focus on charm physics underscored the importance of this field, validating that our development strategy was on the right track. Second, Professor Lee believed that competition had more upside than downside. It would push us to raise our game, draw the attention of global high-energy physics community, and allow for mutual verification of major findings. Third, they urged us to fully leverage the China-U.S. physics dialogue to shore up support for BEPC Second. Lee has communicated extensively with leaders to enhance our budget. And he became the chair of the China-U.S. dialogue. He has leveraged his influence and connection to persuade US labs to help us design, and also personally work with us to develop our key projects. In 2008, BEPC second hit its performance target, outshining CESR's by an order of magnitude. History has proven Lee's foresight in proposing to build a 2+2 giga-electrovolt electron-positron collider in China to study charm physics. BEPC and its successor BEPC second have been operating for 35 years, maintaining a leading global position in Tangshan physics experiment, a rare success story in international high-energy physics. This reflects Lee's scientific wisdom, love for his country, and exceptional coordination abilities. BEPC has been a milestone, paving the way for major national facilities like Beijing Synchrotron Radiation Facility, Hefei Light Source, Shanghai Synchrotron Radiation Facility, and China's Baoshan Neutron Source, playing a key role in cutting-edge research and technological self-reliance. Lee was particularly supportive of the Daya Bay reactor neutrino experiment and Shanghai Synchrotron Radiation Facility. Just as Lee's contribution to the 20th century physics are etched in history, his impact on China's high-energy physics development will be forever memorized. Lee's dedication to science, pursuit of truth, love for his country, and selfish service are shining examples for us all. Like the majestic mountains and boundless rivers, Professor Lee's revered legacy will endure the test of time. May he rest in eternal peace. Thank you, Academician Chen Hesheng. Now let's welcome Academician Gao Yuanming, Dean of the School of Physics, Peking University. Distinguished James Lee, distinguished expert, leaders, colleagues, teachers, and students. Good morning. Today we gather here solemnly to commemorate Professor Tsung-Dao Lee and recall his contribution to the development of education, scientific innovation, and talent cultivation in China. First, on behalf of all faculty students at the Physics Department of Peking University, the Center for Advanced Quantum Study, the Center for High Energy Physics, and the State Key Laboratory of Nuclear Physics and Technology, I would like to express our deepest remembrance for Professor Lee, who is deeply respected and loved by several generations of physicists at Peking University. The insightful remarks from our respected senior have enriched my understanding of Professor Lee's. As a representative of his friend, I am both honored and aware of the immense responsibility this role entails. I would like to take a moment to reflect on the deep and lasting friendship that Professor Lee cherished with his college at Yanyuan Peking University, spanning over 18 years. Upon Professor Lee's suggestion, several key institutes were established at Peking U, the Beijing Modern Physics Research Center, the Peking U Theoretical Biological Center, known as the Peking U Center for Quantitative Biology, and the Peking U High Energy Physics Research Center. During his tenure, Professor Lee played a key role in the joint supervision of doctoral students at the university. He worked closely with distinguished figures such as President Shen Sunding, President Jiang Chen, President Wu, President Xu Zhihong, President Lin Jianhua, who served as the executive vice president at that time, and Secretary Hao Ping, then vice president, executive vice president Wang Yuqing, and Chi Huisheng, vice president Wang Zhuxi, and Shen Keqi. Professor Lee's contributions are also marked by his presence at significant academic and celebratory events. He attended the 21st Century Physics and China Development Caspar Scholar Symposium in 2002, and also in 2006 and enjoyed a reflective tea season in his own 80th birthday celebration at Shaoyuan. Although Professor Lee hasn't been able to return to Yanyuan in recent years due to health reasons, his heart has always remained with his alma mater and old friend. He once said that the alma mater is the origin from which duality is born, and then complexity, and then all things. My relationship with Peking U remains as strong as ever. In 2018, he penned heartfelt letters to mourn the loss of Professor Gao Chongshu and Han Rushan, expressed deep emotions for his longtime friend. Lastly, let me share a personal story. I first met Professor Lee back in 1985 when he came to Peking U to talk about the current and the future of high-energy physics. After his lecture, hardly anyone had questions, because we were afraid to ask questions. With his unusual humor, Professor Lee joked, "No questions? That means you all agree with me. Well then, I'm pleased to announce that today's lecture is the most successful one I have ever given." The audience erupted into applause and laughter. 4 years later, after earning my PhD, I joined the theoretical physics department at the Institute of High Energy Physics, CES, and was fortunate enough to meet Professor Lee again. He devoted himself to the programs of education, science tech, and talent cultivation. Professor Lee's wisdom, humor, sincerity, and selfishness was a natural expression of his true character, and they continue to inspire us going forward. In recent years, during significant milestones such as the 35th anniversary of Beijing Center for Modern Physics, the launch of Peking U Physics Talent Excellence Program, and the 11th anniversary of the Physics Department at Peking U, Professor Lee graciously accepted my request to write several pieces. His encouragement to me personally and to all of us at Peking U Physics community cannot be overstated. Professor Lee will forever be a part of me and all of us. Thank you to Tsung-Dao Lee Institute of SJTU, the Tsung-Dao Lee Library, and China Center for Advanced Science Tech for your invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Academician Yuan Ninggao. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee is a monumental figure, and he has also sown the seeds of fire. He has not only set an example for us with his outstanding scientific achievements, but also paved the way for future generations with his broad-mindedness. Next, let's welcome Zhen Tianlu, Dean of the School of the Gifted Young, University of Science and Technology of China. In my third year of my undergraduate program, I had the great fortune of meeting Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. It was back in 1984 when Professor Lee paid a visit to the University of Science and Technology of China. Representing the School of the Gifted Young, I took part in a seminar with Professor Lee. When we first learned this news, my classmates and I were filled with excitement, anticipating the chance of meeting this esteemed scientific figure. Though I've heard of parity non-conservation before, its physical implications remained somewhat elusive to me then. Not long after seminar started, any lingering nervousness was gone. Professor Lee exuded a warmth and friendliness that put us at ease. He recounted his journey from New York to Hefei, China, involving multiple flight connections. They encouraged us to envision a person embarking on a spontaneous trip, hopping from one flight to another and landing in various airports worldwide. He proceeded to list off the names of numerous cities and airports across the globe. 40 years have passed, yet that moment remains vivid in my memory. At that time, my classmates and I had never traveled abroad or even took on the airplane. Nevertheless, through Professor Lee's captivating storytelling, we felt as though we have traveled around the world. Through this engaging narrative, Professor Lee illuminated the concept of irreversible process in statistical physics and introduced us to the notion of the direction of time. His teaching style was truly remarkable, making intricate scientific ideas accessible and stimulating for young minds like ours. Professor Lee was dedicated to advancing education in China. As early as 1974, on one of his visits, he put forward a plan to nurture gifted young students in fundamental sciences. His vision involved selecting a small group of exceptional talented young people, usually around 13 or 14 years old, to create an elite team of science researchers. This proposal was fundamental in founding the School of the Gifted Young. Professor Lee remained committed to the development of the School of the Gifted Young. In 2023, received a handwritten inscription from him, celebrating the 45th anniversary of the USTC School of the Gifted Young. According to Trilling Wang's recall, at that age of the time, Professor Lee could hardly really write very well. He had to rewrite the inscription multiple times until he was satisfied. This marked the fourth instance where he had inscribed words of encouragement for the school. The first such inscription was in 1979, shortly after the school's establishment, when Professor Lee and his wife, Madam Hui Junqing, jointly inscribed the words, "Pupils excel, institutions path propel." Since its establishment in 1978, the USDC School of the Gifted Young has nurtured over 1,800 students. Among these alumni are influential figures, academicians from the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Chinese Academy of Engineering, as well as socially responsible entrepreneurs and financial leaders. These graduates have met Professor Lee's expectations, contributing to scientific breakthroughs and economic development. The school will always bear Professor Lee's words and value Professor Lee's guidance, viewing talent cultivation as its sacred duty, and will continue forward with determination. Thank you all. Thank you, Professor Zhentian Wu. Next, let's welcome Hai Qinglin, Dean of the Physics Department of Zhejiang University. Dear James, respected guests, colleagues, good morning. Today, with heartfelt reverence, we gather to solemnly honor and remember an extraordinary physicist and distinguished educator, our dearly beloved Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. As a member of the Caspia program and an alumnus of Zhejiang University, where Professor Lee studied, and a fellow physicist, I'm deeply saddened by his passing. I thank everyone for their trust in allowing me to speak here as a representative of the Caspia students. On behalf of all Caspia students in the School of Physics at Zhejiang University, we extend our deepest condolences and highest respect to Professor Lee's family and to all of those who were inspired and influenced by Professor Lee. Throughout his life, Professor Tsung-Dao Lee has dedicated tremendously to the advancement of science, technology, and higher education in China, consistently prioritizing the cultivation of scientific and technological talent within his homeland. Since 1972, he frequently returned to China to teach and provide expert guidance, intensifying his efforts, particularly after the economic reforms and opening up of the late 1970s. Professor Lee made irreplaceable contributions to the strategic layout of science education in China. Cutting-edge research in physics facilitated the training of top-tier talent and the promotion of international exchanges and cooperation. In 1979, he initiated and implemented the China-U.S. Physics Examination Application Program, which selected and recommended 915 scholars to pursue advanced studies in the United States, cultivating a group of outstanding leaders and pillars of society. In 1985, Professor Lee was instrumental in advocating for the establishment of a postdoctoral system and went on to found the China Postdoctoral Science Foundation. In 1998, he initiated the China Undergraduate Student Internship and Training Fund, nurturing thousands of future contributors to basic science in China and creating an important platform for the cultivation of innovative talents. He consistently emphasized the mere study abroad was not a sustainable strategy. He passionately argued that the true key to success lies in nurturing young scientists with China, enabling them to achieve significant breakthroughs. His legacy is testament to the power of focused, strategic, heartfelt dedication to the growth of scientific capacity and national development. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee, a distinguished alumnus of the 1943 class of Department of Physics at Zhejiang U, remained deeply committed to the development of Zhejiang U throughout his life. Actively supporting the construction of the physics discipline was instrumental in shaping its growth and prestigious. He served for many years as the director of Zhejiang Modern Physics Center, making enduring contributions to the advancements of the field, significantly elevating the status of the center as a hub for cutting-edge research and innovation. During Zhejiang U's 100th, 110th, and 120th anniversary, Professor Lee consistently extended his blessings and support across the seas through heartfelt congratulatory messages. Notably, at the 100th anniversary in 1997, he wrote emotionally, "Although I studied at Zhejiang U for only 1 year, I spent 3 years chasing after university during its westward migration because of the war, and those 4 years of my years were closely intertwined with Zhejiang U." By 2023, recognition of his lifelong dedication and contributions, Professor Lee was honored as the honorary chairman of the Zhejiang University Alumni Association Council. In this esteemed role, he continued to provide sage advice, urging the university to prioritize meticulous academic research and technological innovation, accelerate the development of national strategic scientific capabilities, and contribute building a strong scientific and technological nation. In 2021, the Zhejiang Modern Physics Center celebrated its 30th anniversary. On this milestone occasion, Professor Lee personally wrote the message, "Study nature to understand principles, seek truth and innovation," which not only encapsulated his deep understanding of the scientific spirit, but also inspired the physicists at Zhejiang University to continue pursuing excellence, brave exploration, constant self-transcendence. On August 4th, local time, when I learned Professor Lee's passing, I was profoundly shocked and deeply saddened, filled with immense regret. To me, Professor Lee was not merely a respected mentor and guide, but also a visionary scientist and inspiring educator. The Caspia program, which he single-handedly championed, not only altering the destinies of us, but also deeply influencing many aspects of our lives. His historic contributions through this initiative are undoubtedly immense. Without Caspia, there would not be the present-day me and many of my peers. The Caspia program opened the door for Chinese students to the world, providing us with opportunities to compete fairly on the global stage and pursue academic and professional excellence. For this, we are eternally grateful to Professor Lee. His legacy will continue to inspire and guide us. I did my first postdoctoral work at the Brookhaven National Laboratory, where Professor Lee had previously made significant scientific contributions. In 2012, I decided to return to China full-time, and this is largely influenced by Professor Lee. Years of experience have made me deeply aware of the importance of national strength, and that scientific and technological powers, along with military strength, are at the core of a nation's power. Following Professor Lee's teachings, I'm very willing to utilize all my strength to contribute to solving the bottleneck problems in scientific development. I believe that all Caspia students, like myself, have formed an indelible bond with Professor Tsung-Dao Lee through our shared experience. Despite now working across diverse industries and holding a variety of positions, we, the Caspia alumni, share profound commonality. Under Professor Lee's influence, we have developed an unending interest in and deep love for science. We deeply feel Professor Lee's care for young people and his profound concern for the national science and technology enterprise. Therefore, we are filled with gratitude towards Professor Lee. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee stands as one of the most influential figure in contemporary China and among the global Chinese scientific community, celebrated not only for his groundbreaking scientific achievements but also for his profound national pride. His dedication to the advancement of science education in China was marked by boundless enthusiasm and profound commitment. He always took the future of the country and talent cultivation as his own responsibility, establishing the COSPIO program advocating key scientific research mechanisms such as the postdoctoral system and National Natural Science Foundation. Overcoming numerous difficulties facilitated the construction of big scientific platforms like BPC and the Chinese Advanced Science and Technology Center. Professor Lee not only cared deeply for every young person, but also created opportunities for them to pursue science, igniting the flame of the science in countless youth with his wisdom and enthusiasm. His relentless pursuit of scientific excellence and lifelong dedication to education exemplified the spirit of a great scientist and educator, leaving us with an invaluable legacy of scientific knowledge and spiritual heritage. As COSPIO students, we will forever cherish our gratitude and remember Professor Lee's grace and guidance. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee's virtues and legacy are timeless, involving qualities that transcend generations. As COSPIO students, we need to pass on this spirit and give back to the development of the society and the nation. His dedication not only advanced the field of science, but also set a high standard of moral and professional conduct. It is our duty to continue his legacy. Professor Lee forever remains a role model whose virtues continue to inspire and propel us toward excellence. I hereby submit my heartfelt tribute and endless sorrow in this speech.
Thank you, Academician Lin Haiqing. Now let's welcome representative of Huichunqing Sun-Dao Lee Program, PhD candidate at the School of Environmental Science and Engineering, SJTU, Zhou Xingyue. Distinguished leaders, guests, teachers, and students, good morning. I am Zhou Xingyue, a doctoral candidate from the School of Environmental Science and Engineering at SJTU. When I saw the news of Professor Lee's passing on August 5th, I was utterly shocked and saddened. A flood of emotions swept me back to the summer of 2016. Last year, as a high school student from Shanghai, I had the opportunity to attend the SJTU summer program. During the camp, we were organized to visit the Sun-Dao Lee Library. This was where I first learned about the pioneering physicist who made history as China's first Nobel Laureate. Seeing this globally scientific giant, who was also so passionate and accomplished in arts, I was truly inspired. As a young girl who had studied Guqin from a young age and cherished the love for music, I picture a conversation with him, ready to listen to his wisdom and guidance for the next generation. Professor Lee's motto, "True understanding comes from studying the problem, not just the answer," took root in my heart. I aspire to emulate his courage in venture into the uncharted territory of human knowledge. One year later, driven by the wish to follow his footsteps, I was admitted to Shanghai Jiao Tong University as an SJTUer. I have always felt a deep sense of responsibility. I applied for Jinzheng projects and take my first step in my research by exploring the functional material for environmental pollution control and resource utilization. I also joined the university's Chinese music club. Inspired by Professor Lee, I've tried to blend science and art in practice, transforming the rhythms of nature into musical notes, expressing my reflection on the world and life, and drawing inspiration for both macro and micro realm. I have gradually felt the creativity and vitality brought by this fusion of science and art, which continue to benefit me deeply. In 2021, I was honored with the title of Zhejiang Scholar. As a female researcher, I felt immersively proud and privileged. The Zhejiang academic platform has provided me with comprehensive support and guidance in nurturing science. And through this platform, I have had the privilege of meeting a group of passionate travelers on the path of research. Under the guidance of Professor Lee, we seek breakthrough and collaboration in the process of challenging ourselves. On behalf of all Zhejiang scholars from Peking, Lanzhou University, and Shanghai Jiao University, I would like to express my sincerest gratitude and highest respect to Professor Tsung-Dao Lee and Miss Jin and their family. Nowadays, I am a member of Zhiyuan Honor Program. The place I frequently most beside the lab is the Tsung-Dao Lee Library. The seed of scholarly pursuit and diligent study I once planted have now taken firm root. Professor Lee's commitment to scholarship has constantly guided me, urging me to undertake more challenging scientific trainings and cultivate an increasingly meticulous mindset. As China embarks on a quest to achieve its dual carbon goals, I am determined to dedicate my research to serving the nation. I decided to direct my effort into interdisciplinary work, tackling environmental and energy challenges, contributing toward the realization of an eco-friendly China. Professor Lee's towering achievement and commitment will forever inspire us. We shall honor his memory by committing ourselves fully to the pursuit of knowledge and the continued progress of nation. Guided by his persistence, we will strive for new scientific breakthroughs, nurture the exceptional talent of the future, and dedicate our effort toward the realization of great rejuvenation of Chinese nation. Now, on behalf of all Shanghai Jiao University students and Zhejiang scholars, Professor Lee will live on forever. Thank you, Zhou Xingyue. The vast sky mourns the pillar of our times, and the winds and trees weep in shared sorrow. Across the four seas, our hearts are united, and our thoughts linger for eternity. At this time, our hearts are closely connected with the Professor Lee's family. On behalf of all present at today's memorial service, I extend our deepest condolences and care to Professor Lee's family. Now, let's invite Professor James Lee, Professor Lee's eldest son, and Professor Andrew Lee, his eldest grandson, to deliver their acknowledgement. Now, please first welcome Professor Andrew Lee to the stage.
Everyone for attending today. Our family has been moved by all the messages we have received, remembering our grandfather, and stories about how his life has impacted others. I'll briefly share a few words from my sister Andrea and myself. When we were young, we remember how Yaya was quite busy with work. Yaya had an immense passion for physics, which occupied most of his time. When he was at home, he would often spend endless hours in his study with a paper pad and pencil, handwriting pages and notebooks full of physics calculations. Ye's second passion was working on educational initiatives to foster the next generation of scholars and scientific collaborations between different countries. He was especially proud of the new generations of scholars in China and believed that if China did well, that by extension the world would also do well, given China's integral role in global development. In his spare time, Ye would find enjoyment in his third passion, which was sketching and artwork. Ye had a profound appreciation for nature and beauty, which he felt inspired his creativity in physics. He would often sketch landscapes from different sites he visited to give to our Nainai. After our grandmother passed away, he would draw pictures for the rest of the family. As Ye got older, he began to travel less and spent more quiet time at home sketching. This was especially true in his retirement. Ye had a very specific plan about how he would retire, which he executed on his own terms. In his retirement, Ye spent time working on new physics equations, reading over notebooks of previous calculations that he had solved in the past, and going through problem sets that he had written for his graduate students. Mostly, however, Ye spent increasing time documenting the world around him through sketching and art. After Ye retired, he was never without a small sketchbook in his pocket and a few colored pens to capture a budding tree, the flapping birds, the sunlight reflected in the water, and the shade of blue sky compared with the subtly different blue hue of the adjacent ocean. He remarked how sketching was his way of creating a visual diary, observing and capturing fleeting everyday moments which would otherwise be lost to impermanence. When sketching a fruit bowl at home, he would observe the character of the objects as if they could be people. He'd remark how the placement of a pear in relation to an apple appeared as if the two were nodding towards each other, engaged in the conversation. At home, we were surrounded by Chinese paintings, many of them from his acquaintances. He would often look up at a nearby Chinese painting and muse upon the strength of the brushstrokes, the contrast of the black ink with the white negative space, and the elements of the composition that contributed to the core character of the artwork. He had a profound interest in the poetry that accompanied these paintings. He would take the time to carefully explain what the characters represented in relation to the image and admired the beauty and creativity of the Chinese language. This was reflected in the care and consideration that he put into his own calligraphy. He instilled in us a deep appreciation and gratitude for art, nature, and beauty. He was also very optimistic for the future. A phrase he would often repeat in his retired years in San Francisco was, "Today is a beautiful day, as was yesterday, as will be tomorrow." Our grandfather was kind, loving, and a constant role model for his joyful creative practice, taking in the beauty of each day through his ritual of observation, being present, and sketching. He often encouraged us to practice calligraphy, read Chinese poems, and write Chinese characters in his penmanship for us to trace on top of. In addition to pursuing academic scholarship, one way our family will remember Yeye is through my sister's art. And not for the purpose of a final result, but to enjoy the daily pursuit and discipline of creativity which Yeye enjoyed so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew Lee. Now let's welcome Professor James Lee. Thank you so much for your condolences, appreciation, and expression of support. Since we announced the 4th August news of Dad passing, the personal message and public postings have been overwhelming. This is our memorial service for our father. And on behalf of our entire family, we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude for this memorial. Compared to us, you know our dad better than us publicly. Dad was a physicist, an educator, and a scientific leader. But my brother and Stephen and I knew him mainly as a loving father. As his son, our dad was our bulwark of strength, providing us with overwhelming vitality and wisdom. We could dwell for pages of his role in our life. But what I appreciate most, though, are the values and importance he taught us of intellectual pursuit, of concentration, of humility, of duty, of national pride, of personal integrity, of appreciation of fine arts, of the importance of family and friendship. And most importantly, of making a difference rather than making money. Father always encouraged us to learn from his close friend. When Stephen was little, Father shared a puzzle I wrote with the mathematician Dr. Elias Koch. And when at around the same age, I had a school assignment to interview a senior person. Father arranged him to interview a close friend, Dr. Wu Chengxiu. Both experiences were important for my brother. Dr. Wu told him that in high school he wanted to be a writer, to study humanities. So she told his father about this idea. His father had asked to read her writings. After reading her essays, her father told Dr. Wu, well, she was a good writer that if she explored science, she would have something more significant to write about. Dr. Wu told my brother that is how I started my career in science. Our father cared deeply about us and about his friend. He told us when he and Chen Yang received the award of Nobel Prize for Parity Non-Conservation, he wrote to the Nobel Committee that believed that Dr. Wu, having proved their ideas experimentally, should be included in the prize. Later, he sought to allay their decision by nominating Dr. Wu twice for her work on beta decay, first in physics in 1971 and then in chemistry in 1972. And when this nomination fell through, Father quite a bit later had the idea to co-nominate Dr. Wu together with a physicist whom he was confident would win. Indeed, the Nobel Prize was awarded for this work that year, but Father was sad to learn that Dr. Wu was not included in the award. So my father again tried to persuade them to include Dr. Wu. However, today, as Andrea and Andrew have shared with you Dad's last few years, Stephen and I would prefer to conclude this short bittersweet appreciation for our father with something about Dad's vitality and thought during the last few months. Almost up to the end, he could still work short distances, albeit with assistance. Even when he became bedridden, he was still able to talk, think, and communicate. He repeatedly said how much he loved us. During the last few days, he would always talk about his wish to reunite with my family, who died in 1996. Hopefully, in some way now, he had achieved his wish. During his last few days, he said, "I will always be a part of you. You all will always be a part of me." He was surrounded by his families. But I think this word is not only for us, but also for his dear friend, for all of you, his colleagues, as his student, and the country he loves. I'm honored to be part of him. And I, just like you, his friend, his colleagues, and his student, will be a part of him. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor James Lee. Lastly, I would like to share two personal reflections since August the 4th. During this time, I've read many articles reflecting on Professor Lee, which has given me a more comprehensive understanding of his scientific achievements. I deeply feel that, despite the privilege of having a profound relationship with TD and being regarded by him as a close friend across generations, my knowledge of his scientific accomplishments is still insufficient. As seen on the screen, Professor Tsung-Dao Lee published 321 academic papers over his 62-year academic career from 1949 to 2010, making pioneering and milestone contributions in many fields, including quantum field theory, fundamental particle theory, nuclear physics, statistical mechanics, fluid mechanics, and astrophysics. Among these achievements, apart from the Nobel Prize winning achievement, he had made fundamental contributions to the other 5 Nobel Prize winning academic achievements. Which also include the previous speech from academician Yifang Wang that the Chinese internet, its establishment, is also thanks to the contribution of Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. Since August 4th, I've also noticed that the level of public attention to TD's passing even surpasses that of the Olympics, particularly for the younger generation who might have only known TD made significant scientific contributions and was one of the first Chinese Nobel laureates. There was little else they knew about him, feeling he was quite distant. However, since TD's passing, the overwhelming expressions of remembrance and reports about him have given them the opportunity to understand his contributions to the development of China's science and talent cultivation. They have come to realize how close and familiar TD is and how his spirit is. From his first visit to China in 1972 to his last visit in 2010, TD returned to China 49 times over 38 years, with stays ranging from 1 week to 14 weeks, covering all 27 provincial-level administrative regions of the country, as shown on the big screen. TD made numerous fundamental contributions to the development of China's science and talent cultivation. I will say that Professor T.D. Lee really changed the destinies of many of us. The contributions T.D. made to science and to our country are largely complete and have become part of history. However, the expectation for T.D.'s work to contribute fundamentally to the Tsung-Dao Lee Institute and to become a world-class research institution is still ongoing and requires our continued and collective effort. Today, due to insufficient seating at the memorial service, many staff and students of TDRI have had to stand on the slopes to attend the service. Now, I would like to represent them to express their sentiments in one sentence. Professor T.D. Lee, rest in peace. Finally, we sincerely thank the nearly over 1,000 guests in the main venue and satellite venues, and over 2.42 million online viewers who joined us for today's memorial service for Professor Tsung-Dao Lee. Professor Tsung-Dao Lee, may you rest in eternal peace. Ladies and gentlemen, the memorial service for Professor Tsung-Dao Lee has ended. Please exit in an orderly manner.